Here we are. We are back on Survival Worldwide, right here on Reality Pop. And today I am joined by the awesome Leroux Botha, creative director of Survivor South Africa. Leroux, welcome on. How are you?
Hi, Riley. Thank you very much for the invite, and I'm doing really well and very happy to be here and excited to have a chat with you.
Of course, we're just coming off an epic season, Survivor Season 8, Immunity Island, and what a great season it was. Of course, many of us were entertained by the massive cast, and I suppose I'm curious to know, how did you feel about the season overall? Were you happy with the end result? Obviously, we got some great characters, some even in the chat today. I've seen Santini and Mike floating around. How satisfied were you with how the season turned out?
I am over the moon about how it turned out. We couldn't have asked for the season to play out any better. I must say, if we had to do the same season and put the same cast in, I'm sure it would play out completely different, but it would be as enjoyable as the season has been. I'm very happy with how it kind of turned out. There are some lessons that we've learned in the season, stuff that did work, stuff that didn't work. But I really enjoyed it, and as a fan watching it back every Thursday, it was a great joy for me just to kind of know this is a good season of Survivor.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know, what was your involvement with Survivor beforehand? Obviously, I assume you were a fan since day one, Borneo, when Sonia, Rudy, Richard rocked up and Pulaatiga and got going and launched the phenomenon it is today. How did you get involved initially with Survivor South Africa, and how long have you been working on the show?
Right, so my fandom basically started 2001 when the first season was broadcast in South Africa, my husband and I just basically got together, and that was our Tuesday night, Monday or Tuesday night kind of little thing that we did with our neighbor. So we would order pizza and sit down and watch Survivor every Tuesday, and it was like a little ritual kind of at the beginning of our relationship, and so both myself and Henry, my husband and the executive producer of the show, we've been basically fans since the start of it. Then the first season wasn't. I applied for the first season, but because Henry was working and I applied for the second season as well. Didn't get in, but I got to the panel just before the panel interviews, and Henry at the time was working for Mnet, and when the big boss, who was part of the casting at that point, saw me and knew that Henry and I were together, it kind of threw a spanner in the works, so I couldn't enter. But what podcasting was just kind of rearing its head at that time, and so I basically became a podcaster. And myself and our housemate at the time, we podcasted about season 2. It was called the Unofficial Survivor SA podcast, and we would kind of dissect. It's very weird. But we would dissect the episode every week afterwards, and then post that on the podcast universe, which was very small at the time because the technology was brand new. So that was kind of my first involvement, and that was for season 2. And then I was working in the TV industry at the time, but there was an opportunity for me to. I actually hounded the series director on season 3, and I said to him, "Listen, I know you're producing the show. I know I can't enter the show, but could I possibly come and work on the show?" So I had my first interview with him. Thought it went really bad, the interview, and then I got to work on Survivor South Africa Santa Carolina, which is the third season. It was also Nico's first season as host. We shot in Mozambique. It was I mean, that in itself was an adventure, and it was really kind of I remember distinctly kind of being on the beach the first day, and my first interview was with Ashley Hayden, and we had the conversation, and it was as if I was always supposed to be on the beach doing what I'm doing right then. So after that, Henry left Mnet, and he became freelance, and he was head of content for season 4, Maldives, and then we worked together on season 4, and then season 5, which was still under then Endemol South Africa. Endemol then kind of disbanded in South Africa, so the company closed down, and we went into a 6-year hiatus for Survivor South Africa after season 5, and then I I kind of said to Henry and our other business partner Darren, I want to find out what's up with the rights for Survivor South Africa. So and they said, no, it's not. Let's not go there, and let's not kind of go on that tangent. And then it so turned out that I kind of sent an email to the head of Castaway, who is was at that time the format rights holder for Survivor South Africa, before Banner J bought them over. And the lady that we spoke to, I've met before on season 3 and season 4, because she flies out to kind of come and consult on a production and kind of give ideas and that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's part of the format. And so I sent her an email, and I said to her, hi, I want to find out what's the status of Survivor South Africa and the rights for Survivor South Africa, because we might be interested. Got a reply, and Henry and Darren was going to London to go and shop a few of our formats around, and they met up with the format holder, and the rest is history. We got the format. We went to Mnet. We said we're prepared to do this as an advertiser-funded program if you are not interested, but we really think that there is a market for Survivor South Africa, and so they greenlit Philippines. We did Philippines, and it turned out that morning, Chris.
Hey guys, apologies for being a bit late to the stream. I was having some issues with my technical issues to get my internet working properly, but I see you guys have started, so we're off to a good start. Apologies.
No worries. I was just telling the story about how we got involved in Survivor. So Henry and Darren went to London, and they met up with the format holders, and then we pitched it to Mnet, and said to them, we're willing to put our skin in the game and pay half the format fees. You guys come in on the other side, and they kind of agreed to that, and that's basically how we got to be the producers of Survivor South Africa. And Philippines happened, and then Island of Secrets happened, and then Immunity Island happened, and here we are at the end of Immunity Island, and very happy with how it's turning out. I know there's a lot of people who are going to ask about season 9. I'm sorry, I can't say anything yet. We are still waiting for the green light on it. But I suppose the hashtag "When Not If" is back in play for this one. So yeah.
And we got our fingers and toes crossed. So let's just hope that Survivor comes back for season 9 there. Obviously, Survivor South Africa Philippines really almost coincided with a renaissance for international Survivor, obviously with Australian Survivor booming and Survivor South Africa. Lots of global viewers. I know myself in Australia, obviously, I started watching around Survivor South Africa Philippines. And I know a lot of other fans as well, probably some in the chat as well from all over the world, New Zealand, the United States, getting involved. how cool is it to see Survivor South Africa get all this attention from around the world?
It's very cool. The fact that we are one of three English-speaking versions of the show, I think, has a lot to do with it. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we are basically in the middle of Australian Survivor and US Survivor. So we're kind of that the middle path at this stage where there's aspects of Australian Survivor and there's aspects of US Survivor in it. And we're trying to keep it as pure as possible, but with still modern twists. So it is just to have that recognition in terms of the global fan base and the global audience really is a feather in our cap, and we are very grateful for the viewers around the world who have bought into Survivor South Africa. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but Australian Survivor has just recently been picked up by Paramount Plus over in the US. Is this something that in the future, I know you guys have partnered with 10 Play recently. I'm hoping that's going well and that arrangement has brought a whole bunch of new fans that can legally watch the show. I know that's a big issue with a franchise so popular as South Africa. Are you guys considering branching out to other countries that are also sort of watching the show?
Look, if there is a broadcaster in the UK who wants to produce Survivor and they have the rights and whatever, and they need a production company, we're putting up our hands right now to produce that for them. I'm really hoping that something comes off this whole 10 Play deal, mainly. But there is a rights issue, which is a big thing in terms of the territory where the show is going out. The fact that 10 Play is part of CBS, I think, and CBS is part of Paramount. I think that's the big reason why an AU is now available on Paramount Plus, and I would not be opposed to becoming part of Paramount Plus if that is an option. But the rights thing is quite a big thing, and it's quite technical to kind of everybody to plug into where the show is going.
Now, quite interested, you mentioned that you've been involved with quite a few seasons here. What does the creative process look like for you guys as producers after Island of Secrets, moving from Island of Secrets, learning from what works, what doesn't work, and how did you apply your learnings in Island of Secrets, sort of moving into Immunity Island? Because it was a second island-themed season that you guys had.
Yeah, so the idea for Island of Secrets came from, I mentioned it previously, came from the fact that people in Philippines couldn't keep a secret. Katinka's, if you all remember, Katinka had like a really, she was quite chatty and all the secrets were spilled. So the idea for Island of Secrets kind of came from that point. And then after Island of Secrets, we kind of realized that there's certain things that didn't actually work on Island of Secrets, and that we could make it better. The reason why we moved into Island of Secrets and then Immunity Island as themed and not go to a specific area, not call it Survivor Wild Coast, was mainly because of the casting and getting the show out there. So there's we had to go with a themed season on both Island of Secrets and Immunity Island because of the fact that we didn't know where we were going. And to get the casting going, you have to have a theme. So kind of that's why we went for those. The learnings that we got out of Island of Secrets basically was about how how the format could be changed to help the players be better at having to choose who goes. I mean, that was the first learning, was we had to, it wasn't after a reward challenge, it was after an immunity challenge, that you basically gave the players an opportunity to save somebody from the opposite side. So that was the first learning. And then I think the biggest one was you have to make a decision, have a dilemma at the island, and not just arrive and get something. You have to give the castaway a dilemma. And do you give up and go, or do you stay and play? And there's consequences on both sides. And I think that learning kind of changed where we were going from Island of Secrets to Immunity Island. And I think that worked out pretty well during the season.
Absolutely worked out well. And I really thought it almost reminded me a lot of Survivor US season 36 Ghost Island, but just done a million times better, where, as you say, there was that consequence of either staying and playing or giving up and go. Before we continue, I do just want to acknowledge everyone in the chat. So hello to Dylan Fury. I've got Santini in the chat as well, which is always great to see some former Survivor castaways here. Jenny, as always, a regular in the chat. Chris Dixon, of course, is here as well. We've also got, I saw Mike Laws in the chat as well for a period there. Mike, of course, one of the great pre-merge characters on this season. And as Chris knows, one of my favorite castaways from this season, Kiran Nadu, was asking Chris Dixon what happened to Chris Swanepoel earlier on. Also, JC De Silva, welcome to the chat as well. If you guys have any questions throughout, just let us know, and we may end up asking one of those. On the topic of Immunity Island, though, Leroux, I do want to ask, obviously there were lots of twists throughout the season, and I know you spoke with a number of former castaways. Nikki Danza, I believe, came up with the idea for the fire idol, and I know you spoke with Shannon Gates and also Mike Bloom around some of those advantages. What was the sort of creative process into creating some of those advantages? Because obviously some of them we had never seen from before in seasons like US Survivor. Obviously Tide Destiny is one that was borrowed from Koh Lanta. What were some of those processes that went into creating those new advantages?
Right. So just to give you a little bit of background. So when I started developing a new season, I did it on season 6. I started developing season 7 on the day of merge. So that's kind of become a thing now. So we started developing season 8 on the merge day of season 7. And the same has happened now for season 9. It's very interesting to kind of go, what do you want to do with this season? Where do you want to take the franchise, and what are some of the things that you can incorporate that will make the show better, or make the show pop a little bit more, or be an interesting thing that people haven't seen before. So what I usually do is I start off with the layout, how many days, 39, and then go how many people, and then start kind of filling in ideas of challenges that could work, and getting a flow of the challenges. That being said, this changes all the time. So there's although season 9 hasn't been greenlit yet, I'm on version 12 of season 9's content rollout already. So we work ahead. I'm an optimist. I'm a forever optimist. So I always believe that, if you put your mind to it and you put it out in the universe, shit will happen. And so that's just me. So I don't mind keep working on it, because I'm passionate about Survivor, and I want to make it work. But there's also quite a lot of people that reach out to me on Twitter and on Instagram, and some people have great ideas. And if you are a fan of the show, you are going to have an idea about how to do something different on the show. And it is so important to listen to those ideas, because you get really fantastic things that come out, even if it just sparks another idea, and you can tweak the idea. So specifically for Immunity Island, I have a deep affinity for Mike Bloom and Shannon Gus, and we've always kind of chatted. I started chatting to them during season 6 when they started covering it, so we've really become good friends. And then when I was developing season 8, one day we were on a WhatsApp chat, and I said to them, listen, would you be able to spend like 2 hours, 3 hours with me? And let me just talk you through Immunity Island. Let me just talk you through the idea, and let me just pitch this to you. And so that's how they became the consultants on season 8. Which is fantastic, because it brings a completely different point of view. And you kind of start thinking through other concepts and ideas. And I mean, we had the conversation, they gave their input, and then I kind of stood back again, let it simmer a little bit, and then made an executive decision to go with some stuff and not go with some stuff. So that creative process is ongoing, and I love interacting with people about Survivor, and hearing ideas about how the show can be better and what we could do to make it better, and then incorporating those ideas, and giving an end credit for an idea that was used is the best I can do. I can't pay people because our budgets are this small compared to AU and US. So, but we do our best, and give credit where credit's due. So yeah, I'm putting it out there.
I do have a question on a twist, but before that, I want to acknowledge one of the questions that's being asked here in the live. It's a bit of a cheeky question, but we're not above that. Ulrika here is asking, where did the coconuts come from? Because we know it's not native in South Africa, right?
Yeah. So after the night that we had, I think it was episode 12, we realized we had to kind of do something to add to the food situation. We sourced coconuts from a supplier close by who imported from Mozambique. Sugarcane's readily available there, and we did place it on the beach. It didn't magically fall from heaven, but I think it added a little bit of more spice to the general food theme of this season. And we sometimes do that. We usually what we do is we plant like a banana tree or a fruit-bearing pawpaw trees on the beaches. We did that in Samoa. We did that in Philippines before you start shooting, so that it kind of established and it's there, and you kind of have like a give the illusion that there is fruit readily available. But because coconuts are such a staple in the Survivor universe, we kind of had to bring in the coconut. So dankie, Ulrika. It's something that a lot of people have wanted to know.
I picked it up immediately, that episode that he had the coconuts, and obviously being from South Africa myself, I didn't know what a coconut was until I moved to New Zealand. So I was very surprised to see a coconut pop up there. But I do have a question, I guess, about the location. You know, we had to do this season in South Africa due to these, you know, unforeseen circumstances in regards to the pandemic. How much did it help logistically doing this season in South Africa? Because I did notice that the challenges seem to be a lot bigger and grander compared to previous seasons. And obviously, you guys are trying to constantly improve. Did it help being able to source materials and things like that locally?
So the big thing about the bigger challenges and so forth, we're always kind of pushing to go a little bit bigger every season. So specifically with this one, we had that big build, and that was an intentional decision on our side to go a little bit bigger. The fact that we were in SA didn't detract from that. We had always planned to go bigger on that, but because of the pandemic, the way that we had to shoot was so much different from previous seasons that we were in. We had obviously we had to bubble, basically form a COVID-free zone for the players to play without masks, for the crew to work in. So the players were quarantined for 12 days. They all had PCR tests before they started, then quarantined for 12 days. The crew was quarantined for 5 days, with all the crew getting PCR tests as well. And that formed basically a closed set bubble for the crew to start working in. But in that bubble, we had pods that you have to work in. So you had a content pod, you had a camera and audio pod, you had art department pod, internal, and then an external art department pod. Like for instance, if I had to go and so I usually go and check all the games and check all the puzzles and sometimes play them as well. So I had to mask up completely, gloves and all that type of stuff if I handled some pieces on the puzzle. And the rest of the art department who was outside of the bubble had to basically leave the art department when I came in to come and test these things, because they were outside and I was inside. We had so many protocols that we had to follow, and it was, and that made it a little bit more difficult than previous seasons where you pop over the road in El Nido to the art department there, and everybody's kind of working, and you check all the idols and all the different kind of puzzles and stuff. And or when you were in Samoa, I'd take a run to the art department to go and test games, run back to the hotel. So there is a lot of that was missing this season. Also, we didn't have the skills that we had in the Philippines. The Philippines, the local labor in the Philippines are phenomenal. They are craftsmen of note. The same goes for Samoa. So we didn't have that. So we had to employ more South African crew to fill in that skilled, specifically in our department, skilled people who can create these beautiful things. So the crew was bigger in the Wild Coast than it was the South African crew, specifically bigger in the Wild Coast, all South Africans, than it was in Samoa and in the Philippines. How it changed though was we were all in the hotel. We had one wing of the hotel. We had to walk out. We had a separate dining area. The bar, we had a separate bar, but we could only go to the bar in pods. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday would be our department, and content, and then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday would be. So it was that kind of juggling that was going to happen, and then the nice thing about shooting in South Africa was the fact that you could order from your favorite online shop and it got delivered to the hotel, and there were ways and means that made it a little bit easier for the crew to kind of stay in touch with family, get stuff to their hotel room that otherwise in other spots you would need to go to town or that type of stuff. Yeah, you just ordered online and stuff got delivered to your hotel room, and that was great. But the logistics behind the season was challenging.
I can imagine. I do have a follow-up question here. Obviously, the logistics being in South Africa, like you said, there was a lot of challenges. There were a lot of people in the online community that noticed that the Castaways had windbreakers and raincoats this season. Can you talk a little bit to why that was necessary to give that to them on this season compared to a season that is out somewhere on the islands?
Okay. That was a call from our medical team. The drop in temperature from on the Wild Coast specifically, we shot November, December, which is just getting into the high summer on the Wild Coast, and but the drop of temperature during the night, specifically in rainy season where we were in, was not the same as it was in, say, Samoa or in the Philippines. When the temperature drops in the Philippines or in Samoa, it drops by 5 degrees. So you still have, and the rain is cooler, but it's still a warmish rain that falls there. Where on the Wild Coast, it's thunderstorms and lightning, and it's very, very frightening. And it really, the temperature drops like that. So from a medical point of view, the medical teams, the doctors said to us, we need to allow them to have some sort of protection specifically for nighttime. Otherwise, hypothermia was a real thing on the season. So I hope that kind of everybody calms down about the
listen, as someone that has been to Fiji and Samoa, because it's just around the corner here from me in New Zealand, I can tell you that the humidity there is different to in South Africa when it gets cold. So that's more for the fans out there that thought that there were double standards. But I do think that's why we probably have never seen a colder season in the US as well, to be honest. Some people have asked for it.
The big thing is Survivor in its how it used to be before COVID was, you want to see people take off their shirts and run around in their underwear. That is part of the thing, because I don't want to call it salacious, because it's more kind of a voyeurish type of vibe to it, but that they are basically stripped of everything that they have, and that was part of, and I say was because it is changing. That was part of the initial kind of look and feel of Survivor Global. So it's you want to see people, you want to see skin, and that was the big reason why the format kind of suggested heavily that it should be a tropical location with where it's warm weather, warm ocean, and for years that has been kind of the standard. But because of COVID, that standard has now been adjusted. I know Sweden shot shot a season of Survivor in the summer in July, in Sweden as well, and that they also had jackets, and there was also just the initial outcry of why are these people wearing jackets? But once the show got going, it really kind of pushed towards a great season of Survivor. So yeah, I completely understand it, and I fully subscribe to that as well. You do want to see skin because it's kind of human nature, but it's changed now, and I'm not opposed to it. So,
do you find that being so close to the franchise itself that you hear the negative more than the positive when people come at you as well, because it's your baby that you're trying to nurture out there? Because my sort of feedback that I've gotten from the fans in general, and Riley, you could probably agree with, a lot of people are saying top 5, top 10 season. If you look at any of the global seasons together, I think a lot of people are pretty high on it. It's definitely my favorite season. Is it hard to sort of sometimes, I know you're so accessible to the fandom, but do you find that you hear more of those bad things than some of the positives? Because I feel like, if you can do 9 out of 10 things right, it's a pretty successful season.
Thank you. I kind of feel we did 9 out of the 10 things right this season. There are some things that didn't work, that was a little bit OP. For instance, Chappie's immunity win with the breakfast with jury member. I mean, that won't happen again. I promise. So definitely the negative stuff kind of it's heard. I don't pay attention to haters. I feel bad for people who get hate online. I really think it's so unnecessary. If you are a fan of the show and you hate on somebody, that is just not on in my books. I can't do anything about it. I can say, please remember that this is a game and people are playing this game, and you cannot be nasty to them even if you have big feelings about them. But I mean, next to kind of, I don't want to get into an argument with somebody online about jackets. Honestly, life's too short for that. If you feel that strong about it, then go and do something about it. I mean, but so I do listen. I do take it in. I do understand that there are people who I don't know how big are you on. My dad always says opinions are like arseholes. Everybody has one. So you kind of just have to go with it. And like Dylan says now in the comments, hashtag don't be a doers. It's as simple as that. Just be lucky. Thanks, Tristan.
Now, positive opinions. Santini here in the chat has asked you, who is your favorite international Survivor player of all time? And I suppose in this context, it'll be maybe one from US and one from Australia. What's your favorite season? I suppose to add to Santini's question there, who is your favorite tie-dye wearing South African Survivor as well?
I have a big affinity for Rick Devens. I was at the finale for Edge of Extinction in Los Angeles, and at the after party, one of the executive producers invited me, and so I went and met Rick there, and we ended up chatting the entire evening. I mean, there were a lot of other people there that I met as well, but he was just such a mensch, and I have a lot of love for Rick. He was actually planning to come to South Africa for the finale, so we had big plans. He was going to fly in, pandemic was going to be over, he'd come stay with me, and we could go out to wine farms and go to the finale, and all that type of stuff. And obviously that didn't happen. But so I have a lot of love for Mr. Devens, And then Australian Survivor, I really, it's a toss-up between Nick Idanza and Harry Hills. Both of them also superhumans, and I'm all about that superhuman life. So, and then obviously those are kind of, if you are putting a gun to my head to kind of go, okay, the favorite players. But I do have quite a lot of contact with other people as well, that kind of has popped up and said hello. Adam Klein, wonderful, and actually, I don't know if some of the castaways told you the story, but before the season started, I got a whole bunch of previous South African players and previous US players to send shoutouts, and it was like a 3-hour video that of just what they would say to themselves before they started playing, and all of the castaways watched this the day before they started playing. There was quite, like, I know Dino said to me the other day, I think that screwed him up because he was so amped after that he just wanted to play. So, a lot of them kind of jumped in and said, by all means, let me send you something. So I'm not gonna go for favorites on the South African cast, because I have a lot of favorites.
That's fair, especially with your position. I just want to say # release the Leroux cut for the advice that these survivors gave to all of the players who went out there to go play the game. But Leroux, on a note sort of here with I saw a few questions here in regards to an all-star season, but I don't want to just ask you about an all-star season only. I want to run a few themes by you and ask you, how likely are we to see these themes within a South African franchise when we get to season 40? Because we're hoping that it's going to get there. So if you can say between likely, not likely, and maybe, you don't have to justify it. And I'm going to run a few themes by you. So blood versus water. Blood versus water. How likely or not likely or maybe?
Likely.
Okay.
Likely.
Fans versus favorites.
Likely.
All stars.
Very likely.
Okay, the next one I'm going to get Riley to say because this is his idea.
All right, I'll say All Stars, Battle of the Seasons.
So last 3 seasons, Philippines, Island of Secrets, and then also the latest one, Immunity Island, Battle of the Seasons.
6 versus 7 versus 8. I like the idea. I have a cast for that. It is in my head. I don't think the channel's going to go for it though.
Fair enough. So I guess this kind of leads into a question that I saw here in the live, which is, would you consider bringing people back from season 1 to season 4, but let's add season 5 because we didn't add that in there when you do an all-stars, or is it predominantly the ones that Afrikaans have been involved with that you would think about when doing an all-star season? Is it wide open?
I would not be opposed to bringing back players from season 1 through 5 at all. There were some really standout characters. It would be a shame to not have some of those standout characters be in a returnee season. Like I said, it's all dependent on the powers that be, and we do pitch a lot of things to them when we decide on themes for seasons and so forth. So there is always a possibility for any iteration to kind of jump up, but yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to continue because I've got a few more themes here that I want to run by you. So
cool.
This one's quite a selfish one. Expats versus locals.
It's very difficult to cast, but likely, I want to say.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I'll put it in the likely bracket. I like that. Okay, moving on to the next one here. David versus Goliath, or champions versus contenders. I guess they kind of fall in the same bracket.
to be quite honest with you, that would be a newbie season. It wouldn't be a returning player season, but I would probably try, and we would probably.
So this is
try
if you've got 40 seasons, right? This is if you've got 40 seasons.
Okay,
I'm sure you can find a spot somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the last one here,
absolutely.
one that I really like, but we've never really seen it on Survivor, is a Rivals season. Do you think that there would be space for a Rivals season on Survivor?
Yeah, absolutely. There's if you look at the different seasons. I mean, take season 3 for example, where somebody like Ashley Hayden was dominant. She had the same amount of individual immunity wins as Chappie's had, which is phenomenal. I don't think Ashley will ever play again. I'm in contact with her, and I have asked her previously, but you never know. I mean, maybe one day. But her big rivalry was between her and Kaz. He hated her, and to put them in opposite tribes and see if they would work together would be phenomenal to see. So, I mean, like I said, I don't think Ashley would ever play again. I would love to have her back. I mean, I have so much respect for her as a player and as a human being. She's kind, she's generous, she's a phenomenal strategist. So I would not be opposed to it, but I don't think she would ever play. But rivals. If we're talking 40 seasons, absolutely.
Yeah, because you need a few more rivalries. We had some good rivalries even in this season. I think that a few nemesises, to steal Santini's winning there got created this season. But also the last question here before I go back to Riley, what's your thoughts on an international crossover season? Would Survivor South Africa ever be interested in having like an Australian versus South Africa? I know it's going to be tough to get the US involved because that US dollars is tough to compete with. But from a Survivor South African standpoint, would you guys ever be interested in doing some sort of crossover with international Survivor?
I likely.
Great. All right, Riley, you go ahead. I got all my questions answered. That's me for the night.
Fingers crossed. Well, I suppose Chris.
I spent some time with a voice call the other night with some fans, and I said to them, and I'm going to say it to you guys as well. I have in my head Survivor South Africa planned for the next 4 seasons up until season 12, and it is always evolving and always. But I know exactly what I think Survivor South Africa needs for the next 4 seasons, and it is very exciting. And so in my head, the plan for the next 4 seasons is already in motion.
Now, Chris sort of brought it up there with the US dollars, and obviously that would be a bit difficult to make work with Survivor South Africa and Australian Survivor being on a lower budget. I know Australian Survivor works with about a quarter of the US budget. How does your budget look like compared to Australian Survivor and Survivor US, and how do you sort of get around that and make the great challenges and the great production that you do?
Okay, so if AU is a quarter of the US budget, we are not even, I want to see 1/8 of the AU budget, just to put it in that kind of layout. Our budget is obviously, with the Rand being what it is, with our economy what it is, it's very difficult. It is also in its biggest show that they have to spend money on, because it is gawk expensive. But the fact of the matter is, for us as producers of the show, we always want to put Mnet's money on screen. So we're always kind of going, let's rather spend the money and put the visuals on screen and put the right people on screen, so that it the show it is better, and that's, I think, why we are kind of on par with. Look, AU's production value is insane. They have big challenges and big things, and it looks amazing, and I'm very impressed with AU. The same with the US, but also they have the money to make the show happen on that big scale. We, I suppose, it's like the Hamilton line. I'm just like my country, young, scrappy, and hungry, and we are hungry to make the show work, and we are hungry to make it look as amazing as possible, within the parameters of our budget. So yeah, it's a very difficult one for us to kind of manage, but we really do try to make it look fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good question there by Dylan in the chat, because for me, when I look at the show and when I watch it, in all honesty, I don't say this just because you're on the live here with us today. I don't see the difference in the way that the camera work's done. I see a big difference in the way that it's edited and the way that the cast is on the show. If you could talk us a little bit through, and I don't know if that's your department or if you can give us a little bit more insights without giving the trade secrets away. It's kind of like the KFC recipe here at the moment. Only the Colonel knows, and the Colonel in this case is Leroux Botha. I don't want him to give us all the secrets in regards to how brilliantly they put the Survivor South Africa and edit together, but can you talk us through the thought process when a season like this finishes? How long does it take to go through those hours and hours of footage that you have, and how do you put storylines together without telling us too much, I guess, because we don't want to know. Like, one of the great things about Survivor South Africa is, like, I was wrong like 80% of the time here reading the edit thinking I could crack the Da Vinci Code, but can you give us a little bit more insights of what that looks like in regards to from the point where you finish shooting to the point where you have to like go through the process of creating these storylines for us to enjoy as fans?
Right. So in terms of the edit, it's a very interesting kind of part of the show, and I love being in the edit with Survivor. It is such a fun way of storytelling, and I think that's kind of where we are very lucky. Our editing team, compared to Australia, compared to the US, our editing team is tiny. It is literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people in total, 8. So our lead story editor is a chap called Craig Blexley, who's worked on all 8 seasons of Survivor South Africa. So Craig does most of the reality cuts. Then we have Dennis Knoblauch, who is one of our challenge editors, and he does Tribal Council as well, together with Jack Esterhuizen. So between Dennis and Jack, they do all the challenges and all the Tribal Councils. Tribal Council is actually the big cut of 3 hours of a Tribal Council is actually cut down for duration and for content by Hundrey, the executive producer. So Hundrey is also on the editing team. I do all the previously ons, next time ons, all the promos, all the marketing material. I do myself, and then I also do all the graphics and all the end credits and all the paint shots. So I'm part of that team, and then we have Sky, who is Sky Mkhudu. He does night cam and also reality. And then we have our who's number 7, Sky, and then Sean Samuels, who is our post assistant, and he basically does all the Ponderosas, and he syncs up all the interviews and marks all the interviews. So he's basically assisting, but he's also editing all the Ponderosas. So a very tiny team. How that happens is basically as the show happens in real time on Island, the content producers then basically have a content meeting at the end of each day. Stories kind of gets laid out. Selections of stories gets made there, and that basic storylines then go to the editors who start putting sequences together. Once those sequences are kind of put together, then we then go through and say, okay, this is the storyline that we're following here. This is the story that we are. This is probably going to end up on the cutting room floor. This is definitely something that could be in the show, but if we need to lose time, this will be a secret scene. And then everybody kind of just runs with it. And then once the episode gets put, all the different elements come back. Our last member of this small team is Andrew Dixon. And Andrew takes all the different pieces and he puts it together, and then he starts making small little cuts to get it into duration. I sit with him, we watch the episode through, we make cuts again, then we sit with Henry, the executive producer, and then watch the episode. That gets an offline version and gets sent to our commissioning editor, Emmet Terja. She signs off, changes gets made, and then goes to mix and grade, and then it gets delivered to 10 play in Emmet. So that's just in broad strokes how the show gets put together. But really, it is a very small team of people who love what they do and know what they do, and have been doing it very, very well this season. And they are the true legends behind getting the show to the audience.
Now, Kiran Nadu, obviously a castaway on this season, he brings up something up in the chat saying it feels like a lower budget means more reliance on curating the cast, as opposed to in US who can spend money on more fantastical twists. This cast really hit it out of the park. And I do believe I said this to Chris during the season, really a Kagayan level of cast. You look at characters like Chappies and Santini, who obviously made it deep in the game, and even to players in the pre-merge. Jason Brookstein, a great character, went out his first boot. Of course, Dino and Carla, also big characters in the pre-merge. How focused were you in the casting process? I know a lot of them were big fans of the show going in. And I also want to ask you as well, the random tribe swap on day one, the random tribe draw rather, was that a decision that was made beforehand to have a random tribe draw and mix things up in reaction to what happened on Island of Secrets potentially?
Yeah. So once we knew who the cast was and who was going to play with who, because we all the psych evaluations between them, we kind of do like a play of the season, and we think who would play with who and who would kind of clash with who. So that happens after the casting, but we always knew, once we knew who the cast was, that it was going to be a random draw for who goes into each tribe, because everybody could play with everybody, and there would be enough tension with any kind of mix-up of the characters. So that was kind of what I thought was behind the random draw in the beginning. But the casting is such a important part of the show, and I really do think that the fact that this cast specifically had 8 months to think about how to play Survivor, and that's why they came in playing really hard from the get-go, because basically casting was done in December 2019. We finalized the cast, or the final cast, by February, towards the end of February, and then lockdown happened in March, and we had to phone the final group and say to them, listen, you're almost there, but not quite. We're gonna have to wait because we've been postponed indefinitely. And I think with lockdown, that kind of activated quite a lot of the cast members to kind of go, okay, how am I going to? It's given me time to think about how I'm going to play this game, and you can see it in the way that they went about their. People started watching. A lot of people came up with ideas. I know there's puzzles worked out and books and all that type of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that happened in that 8 months before we actually kind of pulled trigger on the show and said, okay, you've been cast and ready to play. And I think that had a lot to do with how this cast kind of went like a bullet out of the barrel.
Yeah, it was exciting from the beginning right through till the end. It was exciting. And I'm sort of curious because obviously myself and Riley, we took a stab at predicting who was going to do well in the season. We were mainly wrong. I think Riley had the best prediction with Nicole Wilmans being his first female pick for the season. So he took out the crown at the end. But for the rest of it, we had a bunch of players that made it very deep, very low in our predictions. Do you guys, you've got a little bit more sort of backing there with psychometric tests and things like that. Do you guys have your own stab in the dark in regards to who you think is going to go deep and who sort of delivered on your expectations and who under-delivered for you, or who surprised you, I guess, this season of the cast that we had out there?
With regards to favorites, I learned my lesson on the first season that I worked on season 3, because Ashley was my favorite working on the show from the start, and it's just incredible. And then she got screwed over in that final tribal council by people who don't actually know how the game is supposed to be played. Anyway, so from there on, I vowed never to make predictions about who or put fan favorites in front. This is going to be this is my winner pick or something like that. It also feels a little bit more like I should be
impartial
about the who is going to play. With regards to this season, I mean there are so many great players that have played this season that a whole bunch of them are in the chat as well, and what surprised me was the fact that people, even though they went into the game knowing that they are going to be a physical or strategic or social threat, that they still went into the game and tried and played hard. And that's something that was quite beautiful for me to see. After somebody gets voted out, the tribe buggers off back to camp, and then we bring the whole crew gathers on tribal council, and we bring back the contestants who was voted out, and every single one of them kind of teared up being in the presence when they get the applause with the crew coming in, and what is amazing is that each and every one of them left their heart on the playing field, and that's what you want. You want people to really play super hard and entertain and have showmanship and just give their all. And we got it in spades this season.
Absolutely. Who is Dylan in the chat here saying you should be as neutral as Switzerland, and of course that is always wise advice. Don't want to give you favorites like Jeff with Boston Rob there. You mentioned Ashley Hayden and Gigi, obviously that final tribal council. How tight-lipped do you have to keep about the winner, and how many people actually know of the final result at the end of the day? Do you guys film alternate endings in Survivor South Africa? Or and how many people are actually privy to the result before the actual final reunion?
So once we go for the vote in, we literally vacate the control room. So it is the audio guy who is has the castaways and must check the levels of the castaways when they actually give their voting reasons. He is not privy to see who the person is voting for. So he can't, he's in his little booth. The cameras are switched off. So he's literally just checking audio. And then it's myself and Henry in the control room. I'm checking focus. I'm checking that the cameras are okay. And then, so nobody but us two knew who the winner was. Not even the editors. They only found out in the last week. So that also speaks to the beautiful moments that you see during the edit. If you go, and I said it to somebody the other day as well, if you go and rewatch the entire season, knowing what you know now about the winner, spoiler alert, knowing what you know now about the winner, you'll see that there's a through storyline during the entire season, and she's in every episode. She has at least one confessional. There's always a positive edit to her edit, and that speaks to us telling the story in such a way to be fair. It's the Schwartz and all edit, as they call it, where Tom Schwartz was a mess, but it wasn't a winner's edit at all. But it is that kind of edit that if you go and rewatch it, you will know why the winner is the winner at the end of the series.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was shocked, and I think a few of us compared this edit a little bit to Tom Schwartz, but I am keen on rewatching it with specifically that in mind, because that's one of the things as a diehard Survivor fan. I like watching a season over and over to look for those hints, the little Easter eggs that were placed throughout the show. So you've got me hooked, and I think it's good for rewatchability, because I'll be jumping back on 10 play and giving it another watch. So hopefully that'll help you guys as well. I did see a question here in the live chat asking if it was intentional for some players to know each other. It came out that a few players didn't really know each other closely, but they knew of each other, or they went to the same university, or they were in the same sports club. How difficult is it in a country such as South Africa? Because obviously, the US has got 300 million people. South Africa is about 50 or 60 million, so it's a lot smaller country. How difficult is it to try and cast people who don't know each other? And do you guys sort of find out about it as the show's happening, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize these two may have had a connection that they're bringing into the game?
The big thing about that in terms of casting is has a lot to do with the broadcaster. So Mnet 101 is a premium service in South Africa. So it's 1,000 Rand a month for Mnet 101. Which is a lot of money, and not a lot of people can actually afford the premium bouquet. So if you look then at casting from Mnet, your casting call goes out on Mnet 101. It also goes out on the other Mnet channels, which is in the lower tier bouquet. But most of the people who enter Survivor is from the premium bouquet, which has, I'm not completely sure about the amount of people, but in the region of 150,000 subscribers. So the pool is already very small. And then you are looking at a higher LSM in terms of the people who are actually subscribed to it and who are actually entering Survivor. So that pool becomes smaller. So it's not just the 70 million South Africans, it's now 150, of which only 3,500 people, 4,000 people would enter. And therein lies the little thing. Those are people who went to the same university, has similar jobs, know people who are on social media, who are influencers, who have connections with yoga studios, who were at the same high school in Durban, and that is kind of where the shift comes in, where on day one, where they realize, I know you from yoga, from the yoga world, or hey, we went to the same high school, or we're from the same town. We used to live like 50 meters from each other, and we didn't know. So I think in that regards, it is it's a much smaller pool to actually choose from. Where the US CBS, you have a much larger pool of people who enter the show, much higher number of people who enter the show, and that makes a hell of a difference in terms of people not knowing each other.
Yeah, but it makes 100% sense. No, it answers it 100%. And it also brought up another question. So I've been chatting while the season's going on quite a bit with Felipe. Shout out to Felipe on Facebook. If he's watching this, he probably won't watch it live because it's in the middle of the night over there now. But he runs a Facebook page, Survivor Fans Worldwide. And he asked me the question about diversity once. And he said, with Survivor South Africa, there is a lot of diversity, but it's still, if you're looking at South Africa, you probably have a black population. I don't know. I've been out of the country for about 12 years now. So don't shoot me if I'm wrong, but it's close to 80 or 90% of the population is black. But when you look at this pay-to-view channel, which has got a very small number of people watching it, are you trying to sort of look at the different people that are watching that show and trying to make it a true reflection of the people who are actually paying to view this channel? Is that being taken into consideration when you're looking at a cast that is very 50-50%, or how do you sort of put that cast together?
Yeah, I mean, our directive has been from when we took over the franchise was to always go 50-50 in terms of POC and diversity, and it is a thing that people have now picked up because Survivor SA is now available on different platforms as well. So it's on not only in Australia, but it's now on Showmax and it's on DSTV streaming platforms as well. So the diversity is and also it speaks to the amount of people of color who have entered in the past 3 seasons. It started off with a fantastic cast of persons of color from season 6, and then moved to 7, and now with 8 as well. So there is a lot of that happening in terms of a shift in terms of representation, to make it more representative of where South Africa is as a country and where South Africa is in terms of diversity and what is being portrayed on screen. If you are going to call it Survivor South Africa, then let it be a closer representation to what the representation in South Africa is. It has a lot to do with the channel, though. It has a lot to do with who is watching MNet 101, and that is changing. It's and we are open for the change, and we are open to go with it. So let's see what happens.
I'm curious to know, Leroux, because you're probably more in the know about the actual TV ratings numbers than we are over here. How is the show performing compared to previous seasons in terms of demographics? Obviously, I know it's on a subscription-based channel, so you're not getting as many views as you would be on the free-to-air normal satellite. But how things be going with demographics, ratings, time slots, all that?
The ratings for this season has been good. Compared to 6 and 7, it is pretty much on par, and that bodes well for us for future seasons. I think because the landscape is changing, they are taking a lot of other things into consideration in terms of ratings now. So the SVOD system in South Africa is picking up. So there's people are binging it a little bit more. They're waiting a little bit longer for people to catch up on the show, to add that to the ratings. People's viewing habits have changed in the past year specifically. With COVID, people are much more open to binge an entire season than they are to tune in weekly at 7:30 on a Thursday. So that much, and people also then have the freedom to then rather rewatch it on a Sunday. So, but with all that being said, the channel's very happy with how the show performed this season. So yeah, that makes us happy.
That's great. So we've got a question here from Dylan, and he asks if you need Mnet to apply for the show. And I guess the other question here is, what would be the easiest way for people to find out when they can start applying for the next season of Survivor?
You don't need Mnet to apply for the show. And if you follow Mnet on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter, they will always kind of post that. And if you are following other Survivor contestants, previous Survivor contestants, you'll know very soon when the show is casting. So yeah, you don't need to have the premium subscription to be on the show. You just need to be a South African citizen.
Now, Lerouxs, we've kept you busy here for quite a while answering a lot of our questions, and myself and Riley, we're both very thankful that you took this time out today to talk about Survivor South Africa Community Island. We hope that with Reality Pop, that this becomes a thing where we can call on you once after the season is done every year, where we can do a little bit of a debrief on the things that work well, how did you put it together, and give fans a little bit more access to ask questions to you directly as well here on the show. I know it's getting pretty close to South Africa playing the All Blacks, so it's going to be a little bit of friendly rivalry, even though I do still shout for South Africa, not the All Blacks. It's been pretty tough being a Springbok supporter in recent times. But Leroux, it's been great talking to you about this season, and I do want to thank you for just the amount of access that you gave a small little podcast like ours to the Survivor South Africa Immunity Island cast, to be able to do the exit interviews this season. And, you know, thank you very much for the buffs. I know Riley's wearing his one today. We really appreciate that as well. And, you know, we hope that we can have you here as a yearly type of thing, and we get you on the show more often.
Thanks very much, Chris, Riley. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate what you guys have been doing for the show. Every little bit helps. I was talking to Riley earlier, and it is amazing how the international online community has taken to Survivor South Africa Community Island, and that I think is the future. There is some sort of change happening in terms of the global Survivor community, and that is super exciting for me. I do think that podcasts and streams like yours is going to become more and more relevant, specifically where we are as a species on this planet. And I am very thankful for what you've been doing, specifically for our little show at the southern tip of Africa. Thank you.
Hey, obviously, it's close to my heart, being from South Africa originally as well. So I will always talk about Survivor South Africa. I've been very proud talking about it this season. But like I said, we really thank you for your time. And if you can hold up for 1 second as I just finish it here, I definitely want to have a word with you just before we finish, because I didn't have that opportunity to talk to you before we went live. Guys, everybody that was in the live here for this whole season, thank you so much. We have got one more episode coming out, which will be next weekend, which is our retrospective with a bunch of fans. We've got also Scott from Slaying the Dragon podcast, who will be for the first time, will join us here on Reality Pop to talk about this season as well. So that will be the official end for us when it comes to Survivor South Africa Immunity Island sort of work. But we do have some off-season content coming in regards to who myself and Riley would love to cast. If we were in Lerouxs' shoes, who would we cast for an all-star season? Where do we rank this season compared to other international seasons? And a whole bunch of off-season content that we will still be doing for Survivor South Africa. As always, guys, guys. Catch us next time here. Hit the subscription button if you haven't actually been here before. Hit a like on this video. It does help with the YouTube algorithms, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye, guys.